It's funny. Think about this for a second. We slap a spoiler warning on a movie review in a heartbeat, right? But then we'll spend an entire semester in a classroom just picking apart every single secret of a classic novel. It's a really strange contradiction in how we treat art. But what happens when the art form is the secret? Yeah, it's a fascinating double standard, isn't it? When we break down a book, we call it analysis. It's considered smart, educational. But do the exact same thing for a magic trick, and suddenly it's called exposure. It's seen as this destructive act that just ruins the art. So, why the totally different set of rules? And this paradox, it goes really deep. With literature, the whole goal is to deepen our understanding. We analyze all its different parts, the themes, the symbols, the character arcs. The result? It's educational. But with magic, revealing the secret method is seen as an act of devaluation. The goal is to make it seem less special. It's destructive. And this fundamental difference, well, it has created a huge, huge problem for magicians for centuries. So let's frame this as a tale of two very different kinds of secrets. On one hand, you have the rich, complex world of a novel like David Copperfield, and on the other, you have the carefully guarded, single method behind an impossible illusion. Okay, so this brings us right to the core of the problem, what I'm calling the law's blind spot. For hundreds of years, magicians have been creating incredibly valuable intellectual property. But our legal system, it's had almost no way to protect something that's designed to look impossible. Let's break down exactly why that is. First up, you've got patent law. Now, this seems like a perfect fit, doesn't it? I mean, it protects inventions. But here is the massive catch. To get a patent, you have to publicly file a document that explains in meticulous detail exactly how your invention works. For a magician, that means literally publishing the secret for the entire world to see. It's a paradox that makes patent law completely and totally useless for them. All right, so patents are out. What about copyright? Well, copyright protects the expression of an idea. So think of the script a magician uses on stage, the words they say. But it doesn't protect the idea, or the method, or the system itself. So you can copyright the patter, but you can't copyright the secret mechanism that actually makes a person levitate. The most valuable part of the whole illusion is left completely unprotected. And then finally, you've got trade secret law. This is what protects things like the formula for Coca-Cola. It guards confidential info that gives a business an edge. But for magicians, it has a fatal flaw. It offers zero protection if someone just figures it out, if they reverse engineer it. And let's be honest, for the audience, trying to figure out how they do that, that's the whole point. And this whole legal mess leaves magicians completely vulnerable. As Professor F.J. Doherty puts it so well, the law simply fails to protect the most common expression of magicians' intellectual property, their live performance. So if you can't go to the courts for help, what do? How did the entire industry of magic even survive? Well, they built their own system, a kind of unspoken code of ethics, one that's enforced not by judges and lawyers, but by reputation and social pressure within their own very tight-knit community. But man, this code has been tested constantly over the years. Ironically, the first major exposure way back in 1584 came from a guy who was actually supporting magicians. He was trying to prove they weren't actual witches. Then, centuries later, Camel cigarettes just blew the lid off this sawing a lady in half illusion in a massive ad campaign. And I'm sure a lot of you remember the Masked Magician specials on Fox in the late 90s. The threat of exposure has always been there. So how does this unspoken code actually work in the real world? Well, let me tell you about the case of illusionist Walter Blaney. He's a past president of the Society of American Magicians, and one day he discovered that a company over in England was selling a cheap knockoff of one of his signature creations. Now, Blaney knew that taking this guy to court would be completely pointless. The owner even bragged to him that there was no court in the world which could stop him. So Blaney didn't call a lawyer. Nope. Instead, he just made a few phone calls. He told his friends and colleagues in London's prestigious Magic Circle, which is pretty much the heart of the industry's social network. And that was all it took. The word spread like wildfire through the community. Magicians, illusion builders, promoters, they all just quietly stopped doing business with the guy. As Blaney put it, the owner suddenly had a problem. And the court that finally put him out of business wasn't a civil court. It was bankruptcy court. That's the power of the unspoken code. For decades, this informal system of social justice was pretty much all magicians had. But then a landmark case involving one of magic's most creative minds came along and completely changed the game. It offered a brand new way to use the law to actually protect their art. The illusion is called Shadows, and it was created by Teller of Penn and Teller. Honestly, it's less of a trick and more like a beautiful, silent piece of theater. You see a single rose in a vase, and its shadow is cast on a screen. Teller comes out with a knife and begins to delicately slice through the shadow of the rose's leaves. And as he cuts the shadow, the real leaves and petals fall from the actual rose. It's just poetic and incredibly original. So, in 2012, Teller found out that another magician had posted a video online performing a blatant copy of Shadows. But it got worse. Not only was he performing it, he was offering to sell the secret method to anyone who wanted to pay. This was a direct assault on both the art and the code. So, Teller sued. But here's the brilliant part. He made a completely different kind of legal argument. He didn't sue to protect the secret method. Instead, he argued that the entire performance, the lighting, the timing, the movements, the whole story, was a unique, choreographed piece of art, just like a ballet or a play. And in a totally groundbreaking ruling, the court agreed. The judge declared that Shadows wasn't just a trick, it was a dramatic work. And because it was a dramatic work, the entire performance was protectable under copyright law. This was huge. For the very first time, a court protected the performance itself, setting a massive new precedent. And this incredible legal victory brings us right back to where we started, back to our original paradox, but it finally gives us a way to solve it. It forces us to rethink what magic, and really what all art, is actually made of. The legendary illusion designer Jim Steinmeier put it perfectly. He said, "Magic is part science and part showmanship." The science is the secret, right? The clever method, the hidden mechanics. But the showmanship, that's the performance, the story, the emotion, that's the art. So let's look at our comparison one last time. For literature, the science is that collection of themes and literary devices. Analyzing them doesn't destroy the art, it actually makes us appreciate the showmanship, the absolute wonder of Dickens's storytelling even more. For magic, the science is the secret method. For so long, everyone just assumed that if you revealed it, you'd destroy the showmanship. But what Teller's case proved is that the showmanship, the drama of his performance, is a valuable, protectable work of art all on its own. In the end, the solution wasn't to legally hide the secret. It was to legally recognize the art. And it really leaves us with a bigger question for any creative work, doesn't it? What truly holds more value, the secret of how it's made, or the unforgettable wonder of how it makes you feel?